Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. Thank you all for tuning into the show today. We have a great show lined up. Kind of a mixed bag, but both hours are going to be excellent. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking to Barry Weinhold about, are you a 21st century man? And in the second hour, we're going to have the infamous or famous Erich Von Däniken talking about all things ancient and alien. So I'm very excited about that. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and psychic readings. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading our free 50-page guide. If you haven't already gotten a copy of Icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, it's available for you on Amazon Digital Downloads, only $1.99, along with all of my other books, which you can get through the Just Energy Radio page. So it's just a click away for all of you. Let me tell you a little bit about Barry. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation we're going to have. So men, I hope you're prepared. Barry Weinhold is Professor Emeritus at the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs. He was the founder of the Master's Counseling and Human Services program at UCCS. He has also been a licensed psychologist in private practice for 38 years. He specializes in working with adult male clients. Currently, Barry serves as the co-director of the Colorado Institute of Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership, a 501c3 educational nonprofit organization in Colorado Springs. So please welcome the author of The Male Mother, Barry Weinhold. Hey, Barry, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rita. Good to talk with you this morning.
Well, and it's great having you back on the show, but I have to ask you, we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to put this in quotes, the male mother.
Right.
I can just feel my male audience members going, their skin going, huh?
What?
What? So talk to me about it. What do you mean by the male mother?
Well, the term actually was initially came from Robert Bly and his book Iron John back in I think it was early 90s. He wrote about this. He didn't write a lot about it, but he talked about how men in our culture didn't really get initiated very well, and they go into adulthood without good role models about what it's like to be a man. And so he suggested that they need mentors in the form of male mothers, older men who could mentor younger men. Well, I kind of liked that idea, but I thought, gee, I've worked with fathers for many years, and I think that fathers, it's not rocket science, but if fathers had the skills, they could do what Bly suggested that older men had to do for younger men who didn't have that when they were growing up from their fathers. So I set about writing a book for fathers to help them understand what they could do for their kids to give them the solid foundation they needed so they wouldn't need a mentor later to help them navigate adult life.
Well, when you look at men, because you're looking at obviously the byproduct of a child, what are you noticing that is, I'm going to say, perhaps deficient in them because they're not having this male model growing up?
Well, it's the fact that the models they do have are pretty unbalanced. We have a lot of models of what it's like to be a man, and they no longer fit. I think your lead in about the men of the 21st century, they want a different kind of model for what it's like to be a man in this world. And it's clearly unbalanced in the form of too much masculinity. Now, in our culture, we have kind of avoided and actually condemned men who have developed their feminine side. And so they are really very overbalanced in the masculine area. And I think that's been the cause of a lot of our problems. And men are still the leaders in most of the institutions in the world. And I don't think they've done a very good job, in my opinion. I mean,
Sorry, guys.
We have more wars and more conflicts than we've ever had before, it seems. And I think we need a new model. And that's what the male mother is. And in my book, I talk about how men, men, when they have a child, I mean, they see their wife going through this enormous pain to give birth, and they are so, and if they're really devoted fathers, they're right there with their spouse or their partner giving, well, that woman's giving birth, and then after the birth is finished, they don't know what their role should be. And they also feel pretty kind of insignificant after they see what their wife or their partner went through to give birth. And so they kind of feel disenfranchised in a way. They want to help, they don't know what to do. And so eventually they just sort of give up and go back to work.
But isn't that the expectation in our society, is that the husband, the father, the man, is the person that is the primary breadwinner of the family, and that's kind of his contribution to the family dynamic?
That was the model, and the new model is emerging. Young fathers often are opting to stay home with their children and have their wife work. And this is a new model that we've not had before. And so they, or if they can't do that, they want to be involved as equals in the raising of their children. And I saw that one example that happened this last summer that was very interesting. Daniel Murphy, the second baseman for the New York Mets, took time off in mid-season to be there at the birth of his child and to stay there. And I think he took a week or two off. Well, the sports writers just creamed him. What is he doing? Why is he taking time off in the middle of the season to be there at the birth of his child? Why is that so significant to him? And they said, one of them even suggested, well, why didn't they just have a C-section and get it over quickly so he could get back to work? Well, that caught the national media, and there are a number of newscasters, including Chris Hayes on All In with Chris Hayes on MSNBC, brought Daniel on, and he had a long discussion with Daniel about the importance of fathers being there at the birth of their child. And interestingly, every time after that, during the baseball season, I watched this, when a baseball player's wife gave birth to their baby, he took time off, and nobody said anything. So the barrier has been broken at that level. And I think that's an important kind of model that younger men need. Even in companies where they give paternity leave for fathers to take time off to be home with their children early on, most men don't take it.
Or they take one day.
Take one day, yeah. So it's a new emerging model, and I'm excited that the Male Mother book gives fathers not only the skills they need, but also helps show them how important it is to be there. And I talk about 4 initiations that fathers with male mother skills have to perform to give their children the kind of foundation they need to lead effective lives as adults. I can talk a lot about that. So you want me to talk?
Well, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting your comment about that men are trying to create equality in the rearing of their children, where women have been trying to create equality outside the home. It sounds like men are trying to create equality inside the home.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it, because that's exactly what I see happening more and more. And I want to be able to support men. I mean, I work with men and fathers in my private practice as a psychologist, and I've talked to a lot of men about their role as a father. And I've yet to meet one father who said, I was well prepared for the job of a father. Not one. Now,
but I don't think women are prepared for the job either if they're a first-time mom.
Probably that's true, but even so, there's no real attempt to prepare fathers. And this book is really an attempt to give fathers the skills they need to do the job that I think needs to be done. I think really, I look at this, I'm a kind of a visionary, so I look at things I look at the big picture. I think this is where we're stuck as the human race. I think that men and women they haven't really developed fully the various aspects of who they are. And the women have developed maybe their feminine side, the men have developed their masculine side, but I'm talking about men and women developing both sides. And this is a Jungian model. Carl Jung talked a lot about this. And he said that really people can't achieve full maturity until they've done this. Joseph Campbell wrote about this in his book a long time ago called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and he talked about the transformational journey. And he says at one point in the journey of transformation, you reach what he called the hieros gamos, which is the inner union of the masculine and the feminine, the marriage of the two parts. And when people arrive at that level, then they are fully equipped to handle whatever's happening in their lives much more effectively. And I think that's going to be what is going to spur evolution of the human race, is when more and more people have that kind of balance between the masculine and feminine and have it well integrated.
But it also sounds like if there is the opportunity to balance the masculine feminine, I mean, I think there are men who are manly men. Absolutely. And, that's who they are. And there are men that are more emotional or empathic and have more of a feminine side to them. Not that they're feminine, but a feminine side.
Absolutely.
And it would give them permission to be that way. And they don't have to be this macho man if that's not who they are. And the same with women.
That's true. I think there are a lot of women who operate on their male polarity. They in order to make it in the world of work, they have adopted the masculine kind of archetype, and they think that's what they need to do in order to be successful. Well, they need the feminine side too, because we need women in the workplace and the boardrooms that can help make the decisions that really are decisions that, as the natives said, that affect the next 7 generations, or as they call it, the 7 generations yet unborn. And that's the kind of decision making that only people who have integrated their masculine and feminine can make.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I in listening to you talk, I have 3 brothers, but I come from a very large family, and I feel like they were, I'm going to say, fairly well prepared, because all of my brothers have younger sisters that they had to take care of at some point in time, change diapers, do all of that kind of stuff, where in a lot of families, that's a girl job. and not something a boy would do.
Yeah.
And my mom was an equal opportunity employer of anybody that was standing around.
Yeah. Well, I had a few of those, like, I don't do windows. When I was growing up, that was one of them. I used to say, I don't do windows. And of course, I was the oldest of three children, so I was there. Actually, my brother is 12 years younger than I am, so I was there to help raise him from an infant on up, and I was sort of almost like a second parent. As I was, and when I left for colleges at 18, he was only like 6 at that time. He had a complete breakdown. He just fell apart because his anchor, who I didn't realize how much of an anchor I was, I left, and he recovered obviously, but it was a very hard on him, and a surprise to everybody. No one thought that my leaving would have such a huge effect on my brother, but it did.
Well, it sounds like you guys had a pretty close bond.
We did, yeah.
Why do you think traditional roles are changing?
Well, that's an interesting question. I just think that I'm an optimist, so I look at it positively. I think people are getting awake more and aware of the limitations they have, and they're trying to do something about it. They kind of know there's a better way. They kind of know there's some way they can do this in a much easier way, and so they're really looking for the resources to help them improve.
Do you think it's also, in the last, right, I'm going to say 50 years, 40 years, there has been the obvious increase of women in the workforce and taking on more professional roles, etc.
Right.
What impact does that have on the changing dynamic of the male role in society?
Well, hopefully it has had a positive effect, and obviously some men have trouble with that because their own lack of self-esteem or a lack of development of their fullness. And they are threatened by women who come to the workplace and actually can do things better than they can.
Yeah, I got stories, Barry. I got stories.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah.
So that is an issue that I think is part of the transition we're in right now. That will smooth out eventually, as more and more people hopefully do develop both the sides of their personality, the feminine and the masculine, and they integrate those. So when they come together, there's no threat. In fact, it's seen as oh, there's more of you now that can help in this situation. We need everybody to be involved, and everybody has to take part in this transition we're in.
And just as a disclaimer, if men embrace their feminine side, it's not going to make them be weak, or it's not going to make them be gay, or anything like that, right?
No. It's really add on. It's a value added piece, and it enables them to be more effective in whatever they're doing, not only as a father, but as a teacher or whatever, as a doctor, a lawyer, a corporate executive, whatever they're doing, it helps them do a better job.
Is it possible to kind of give an example or kind of lay a scenario down of a man who has embraced this part of himself so that people can kind of get a feel for what that would look like?
Well, I think, yeah, there are a number of what I call male mother skills that fathers need to learn. First of them is really to develop genuine empathy toward their children, particularly when their children are experiencing some deep feelings. Fathers aren't so good at feelings, because they've never been taught how to do that. So with some instruction, they can learn how to relate to people who are in some kind of deep feeling state. Maybe they fell down and got hurt and they're crying and they need some comfort. Well, fathers often say, well, here, go to your mother. She'll help you. Well, that has to change, and I think it can change with fathers learning a few skills on how to deal with people and have some empathy for them when they're in some distress. They have to also show compassion towards their children. Actually, even when their children might oppose their requests in some way, to understand why that child might have a different way of looking at things. They have to also be able to look at their children as doing the best they can and forgive them when they fail and not get overly judgmental about them. They have to learn how to give emotional support, mirroring, and what I call unconditional love. Too often parents give what I call conditional love to their children. I'll love you as long as you get good grades. I love you as long as you, sometimes it's fulfill the dreams I never was able to fill. So it becomes fairly conditional. So learning how to do that, give that love unconditionally. I think, I remember with my son, there was something he had done that he thought was going to displease me. And I said to him, you know, there's nothing you can ever do or say that will cause me to stop loving you. I will love you regardless. And I'm glad I said that to him, because it gave him a sense of security and safety, that there wasn't anything he could do to destroy the love that I was giving to him. And I think that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
You might kick his ass, but you'd still love him.
Absolutely. I can not like what he did, but I can still love him. Mm-hmm. So, and then I think another thing that I think male mother fathers could do is they could help create a lifestyle and model a lifestyle of life-giving rather than life-taking.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that traditionally men have been put in the role of life-takers. Women have been put in the role of life-givers. Obviously, they are life-givers. And in many cases, men have been called to go to war and they've been life-takers. So these are two stereotypes, obviously. It doesn't fit in every situation. But I think that men who develop that feminine side have more life-giving kinds of qualities. And their children pick up on those, and they can model that for their children. And I think this helps them grow up having respect for other human beings, maybe even plants and animals and all the creatures that on our planet that are somewhat dependent or vulnerable, that they don't have to feel like they have to be aggressive toward them. They can be much more compassionate, understanding, and supportive. I also believe that it's important that, and Carl Jung said this, that there's a wisdom of the heart that the mind never understands, never will understand. So I think this intuition that maybe women have sometimes had better opportunities to develop, I think men could develop just as well. And so developing the wisdom of the heart and having intuition on their side and as another tool, another skill, will help them in every situation in their life, not only just as a father.
Well, and it sounds like the things that you're talking about, you know, obviously it can be applied to a child, but also can be applied to every single person on the planet in every relationship that you have.
Absolutely, yes.
You know, so, I mean, I feel like it would help the individual develop as a person.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's the whole goal is, I think if we had two committed parents working together cooperatively to raise a child, what a difference that would make in the ultimate life of that child. I mean, you're creating a foundation for the child. And if there are holes in that foundation, they're going to fall in them. They're going to fall in those holes as an adult. So if you begin to create that from the very beginning, and that's what the 4 initiations that I put in the book are all about, to help create that foundation.
And I'm just going to ask this question, and I'd like your opinion. It seems to me that there is a number of parents, you know, and I don't know if I should just throw it on women or parents or whatever, that have children just because they think that's what they're supposed to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so how does all of this fit into that dynamic?
Well, I think that children deserve to be planned and wanted, and so and for the right reasons. And I think that a child with two parents who have, kind of thought through why they want to have a child, they do the planning they need to do, they want the child, and they then are ready they prepare themselves to bring that child into the world. That's the kind of beginning that children need.
Okay. Which brings us kind of to another topic. It seems today that in many families are affected by divorce, and with that, it's the mother who raises the children. And I'm sure you have a lot to say about this, and so I'm going to start with this. Are there any negative effects about not having the father involved in the child's life?
Oh, God, yes. I mean, the research is very clear, and my own clinical research just shows the enormous problems that people have when they don't have a father who's physically present, or they have a father who's not emotionally present, who's distant and distracted and tired. And I know my father, when he came home, he worked like 2 or 3 jobs, and he'd come home. My only memories of him for the first maybe 6 or 8 years were him lying on the couch between one job or the other, resting, so he could go back to the other job. So I never did get a chance to really have much relationship with him until much later when I was a teenager.
But what kind of impact does that have on the child? And maybe not during their childhood, but, even later in life when they become adults and parents.
Well, children model after the behavior they see in their parents. So in my case, I think I became a workaholic, like my father was, because that was the model I had of work hard and tire yourself out and do everything you can to provide for your family, but don't take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Oops.
Whoops, forgot that one, huh?
But in those type of situations, obviously, if there is like a joint custody or visitation of the father, can you still create that balance that you're talking about, even if the parents aren't together full time?
It's harder, but yes, you can. And you have opportunities regardless to provide that foundation if you're really committed to co-parenting. And many parents, even after they've divorced, are still committed to co-parenting.
Do you have any tips for those dads? Because I think for a lot of them, they feel kind of like a third wheel, fifth wheel. They're just like this guy that the kids have to go visit.
Well, that's why, again, the book shows the importance of what the role of the father is in the lives of their children. And I think that's an important thing for fathers to understand, that they do have an important role. Even if they're divorced and they're only seeing the kids on every other weekend, they still have an important role in the development of those child and helping to create the foundation for them so that they can have a successful life. And so it's interesting too. The other thing, advice I'd have to fathers is give up your guilt about not being perfect at this job. Nobody's perfect. Women aren't perfect at being mothers, and fathers aren't perfect at being fathers. And if you don't give up your guilt and shame, your children are going to end up with more of a relationship to your guilt and shame than they do to you.
And in what we're talking about, are we talking about this is the dynamic because you want to empower your sons, or are we talking equal opportunity, your sons and daughters?
Absolutely. It applies to both daughters and sons. And in the book, I talk about that. It's not just raising your sons, it's raising all your children to be effective in the world and to help create the foundation for them so that they can do that.
And if the dad's not around, is it a good idea to find some kind of a male role model, or, have a male energy to kind of step in to take that role?
Oh, I think that's certainly happening. In fact, more and more grandparents are ending up raising their grandkids than ever before. And a good grandmother and grandfather can often have better help, or better, they can do a better job because they're not kind of tied in as much as parents are to all of the things that help or actually prevent parents from being as effective as they could be. So grandparents raising their kids often are a model that where the grandfather who's had many years of experience in life can take the child out into the world and show them more about how the world works. And that's one of the four initiations that I talk about in the book, that the fathers or grandfathers have to be the ones that take their sons and daughters out into the world and show them how the world works and help them gain mastery over first their everyday environment, but then the world around them, outside the family, outside the home.
Well, I know, like with my grandparents, we minded them. My parents, sort of, in a different kind of way. It was in we're gonna get in trouble. But with my grandparents, it was like they asked you to do something. It was like, okay, Grandma, and you just go do it.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be happening with many people. I've heard many stories about that. That Grandpa and Grandma seem to have a better grasp on what needs to be done, and also they're sort of more experienced because there's a learning curve for young parents, and the grandparents now have had the years of experience, so they know what battles to fight and which ones not to, and they don't get into power struggles with their grandkids as parents often do. So it's a much, I think, it can be a very healthy situation.
Good. Do you have any general rules or tips for fathers that they can use to practice their male mothering skills?
Well, in the book, I have various kinds of practice exercises for the reader to practice their empathy skills. I give them a couple of little quizzes about, here's what's happening. What do you think the person that's described here is feeling? Tune into the feelings if you can. And so I kind of think that it's a skill that you have to learn. And so if you have some practice at it, that's the main thing I'm asking people to do, just to practice. And as you practice, you'll get better at these skills. As any skills, new skills that you learn, it's first going to feel awkward and difficult, but eventually you'll see the results and you'll begin to say, yeah, I did it. I was able to really be there for my son or daughter when they needed me.
Well, and it seems like the tools that you are providing, even though the book is called The Male Mother, many women could utilize very similar skills to become a more conscious parent, I guess would be the correct way to say it.
Yeah, I actually have a whole chapter in the book about the male mother in women, how that has to also be part of the team. Since both of them are working together, then they both have to have these male mother skills and learn how to feed off each other and trade off. So if one day I don't feel very warm and nurturing, maybe you do.
Is it important in the dynamic between the parents that they have a platform or an agreement to, this is how we are going to raise our children, with some general guidelines, and between the two of them so that they can provide consistency to their children?
Absolutely. And I think the main job is to create a cooperative agreement rather than a competitive agreement. Most families and most parents end up competing with each other for the favors of their children. And so if you have a more cooperative agreement that you're not going to buy into that kind of behavior and you're not going to promote it, I think you're far ahead of the game.
Well, and I think the kids figure out,
who to go to.
Who to go to? It's like, well, if I go to dad, he's going to let me do it. Where mom's going to be like, you're crazy.
Well, that does promote a kind of a two against one attitude, and we discourage that. So if Bobby comes to me and says, I'd like to do this, and I'd say, well, that may be a good idea. Let me talk to your mother, and I'll get back to you. So you work as a team. As long as you can keep your kids from doing a divide and conquer, you'll be able to do that more effectively.
Having that consistency in the bringing up of children, does that help the child? I'll just put a period there.
Oh yeah, it's invaluable. Consistency is really an important characteristic, because these behaviors, these attitudes, these feelings that the child grows up with grow out of a consistent kind of pattern that's modeled for them and is expected of them. And so as long as that consistency is there, they will not get confused and will be able to follow that model.
It seems like I'm going to say this generation, whatever, that there is a lot of, I'm going to say spare the rod, spoil the child, but there's not a lot of discipline or expectations from parents. What's your thought on that whole concept as far as what we're talking about now?
That's absolutely the worst thing you can do, is not give any limits or do no discipline at all, because children need limits, and they will act out if they don't have them to try to get the limits. So sometimes when you have an acting out teenager, it's not the teenager's problem, it's the fact that the parents have not set effective limits, and the teenager's acting out to find out where the limits are.
So I will do this to see if I can get away with it, and if I can get away with it, I'll just keep doing it.
That's one of the things that happens, frequently. But then, interestingly, and I've studied this and others have studied this, that children who grew up in families where they had very permissive parenting, they almost all end up feeling that they weren't loved by their parents.
Interesting.
Yeah. So parents sometimes think, well, if I discipline them, they're not going to think I love them. Well, that's not true. When you discipline your children, you're showing them that you care about their behavior, and that you love them enough to intervene and make sure that they're safe and that they learn how to grow up effectively. And if you don't set any limits and you don't discipline them, they kind of think you don't care.
Well, and I think it makes them be more rounded in general. One of the things that I see, because I work with, I have a lot of female clients, and then we end up talking about their teenage or young adult children, that there's this rash of depression that they're experiencing, the child, because they get out of high school or they're a senior in high school or whatever, and now there are these expectations that they do something.
Absolutely, and many of them don't feel prepared for what they now see that they're going to have to do. And there's also been a rash of teenage suicides. I don't know if that's national, but locally it's an epidemic.
Really?
Yeah, and people are scratching their head. Why are all these 16, 17, 18-year-olds killing themselves? And so there's some people now looking into that and seeing if we can find some answers to that question.
Well, I mean, I just see that, there's not even responsibility placed on the child to go and do stuff. You tell them to clean their room and then they don't do it, and you're like, and then there's no consequence for it.
That's right,
They
right. Well, there's a lot of good parenting programs out there for parents who have trouble setting those limits. There's Love and Logic is one of them that I know of, where they talk about natural and logical consequences. So if a child doesn't clean their room, that what would be the logical, natural consequence that would help them remember to clean their room? And I often encourage parents to involve their children in setting those consequences. Like, what would help you remember to clean your room? What would have to happen to help you remember that? And and then they have to come up with the consequence. Well, if I don't remember it, if I didn't get to go to the movies, or I didn't get to go out with my friends, that would probably help me remember. Okay, that's a consequence then we'll use. So you engage the children in that process. Don't just arbitrarily assign a consequence that may have no meaning for them.
Well, and it sounds like with that format, they made the consequence, and so they have to live by their own rule.
Exactly. That's how it works.
Oh no, I broke my own rule.
Right. Yeah.
All right, going back to the male mother.
Yeah.
Let's talk biology for a second. From a biological point of view, does taking on this role, as the male mother, change chemistry in fathers?
Absolutely. It also helps develop a part of the brain that can, in many people, be underdeveloped, and that's the prefrontal cortex. We know that the prefrontal cortex houses a lot of these male mother type behaviors and skills. And if you haven't developed those, your prefrontal cortex in your brain is not developed. So you're leaving out a big part of the resources that you need to be effective in the world. And so the chemistry and the biology is there, and the research has been very clear that people who develop these skills have a much more fully developed prefrontal cortex in their brain.
Well, and what is the prefrontal cortex responsible for?
Well, it also it helps us make decisions. It's almost like it has an executive function of it. It also helps us use our intuition as a tool. When we don't quite know what to do, we kind of tune into our own intuitive feelings about what might be the best choice here. It also helps us develop empathy and compassion, and learn how to really use our feelings more effectively in our life. So those are all things that come out of the prefrontal cortex.
Well, I guess women must have giant prefrontal cortexes.
Interesting you would say that, because the research confirms that. Women have much more fully developed prefrontal cortexes than men.
Haha, my prefrontal cortex is bigger than yours.
Right. Well, I guess if you want to be competitive about it, you can do that. But the other side would be, okay, I've worked on these things. How can I help you work on these things too? I've learned how to do this because society has said it's okay for me to learn how to do this. So how can I help you learn how to be a partner, an equal partner in parenting our children? And, I think, if men are open to that, women can teach them a lot about how to do that. Although men do nurture differently than women. And that's
Explain.
Well, women tend to, in their nurturing, they tend to be much more enveloping and kind of, oh, here, come, let me hold you and comfort you. Men are different about that. They tend to nurture by saying, well, I can see, if they're doing it well, I can see this is hard for you and you're having a hard time with this. So how can I help you? What can we do together here to help you feel better? So they come at it a little differently than women do. And I think having both of those operating in a family, I think, is very healthy.
Have you worked with any men who have, that seem like manly men who have taken the opportunity to nurture and, become a male mother, and changes within them, within their personality yourself?
Absolutely. And all of the things I write about, I have worked on and developed in myself. So I'm a model for men who come to me and want to know how to do it. I can tell them how to do it. I can also show them how to do it.
But I'm just kind of looking for an example. I just, I have that curiosity factor. So what kind of things change? I mean, because there are a lot of men who, that's my wife's job. The children are my wife's job. I mean, have you seen them make the transition from not taking any responsibility to actually stepping into the role of parenting? And what was your observation as far as the personality change?
Yes. The answer is I'm seeing many, many more young men, millennials, who are now saying, I want to be an equal partner and I want to learn how to do this. And it's enlivened them. They're much more alive and passionate about life and about what they're doing. I just, and actually it sometimes isn't just younger men. I'm in a men's group, and one of my men in the men's group just became a grandfather. And he is so passionate about this child. His daughter sends him pictures every day of this baby. And he comes to the men's group and he shows us the latest pictures every week. And he's so excited about it. And he says, I want to be in this child's life as much as I possibly can. And he said, it's my number one priority in life right now. I mean, that's a shift.
Mm-hmm. But that's really great. I mean, because there really hasn't been permission for men to do that, or, just because of social stereotypes. I mean, speaking of that, we're talking about social stereotypes. What other kind of obstacles do men face in trying to make this transition?
Well, it does take some courage to face the fact that many people will not support you. They may be outwardly critical, or they may be kind of silently critical, and you'll notice that they have some judgments about the fact that you're doing some things. I mean, that's true. That's why men don't take their paid paternity leave, because they're afraid that there's going to be some judgment among their coworkers if they do that. So I think I think the people the young men that are doing this are the pioneers, and obviously the pioneers are going to have some arrows in their back, so to speak. People are not going to accept this, and they're going to have some things that they're going to have to work on. I have some things in the book about that, about how men can handle that, because I think it is a reality that we're in this transition between the overemphasis and the unbalanced male and masculine characteristics to where men are beginning to learn how to develop their feminine characteristics. And then the third stage, of course, would be to put the two together, which is a whole nother, maybe that's another book. I don't know.
Integration. We're going to talk integration.
Yes.
Any other kinds of obstacles? Even from a legal, I think the Family Care Act was a wonderful benefit to men, women, and families in general. But are there other places where men or people have conflict in taking care of their children?
Well, let me just go back to the Family Care Act. It's too little, too late. And actually, the United States, among all of the developed countries, is the least supportive in their policies towards mothers and fathers taking time away from work, paid time away from work, to care for their young children. We lived in Czechoslovakia when we worked on a project for the United Nations. And in Czechoslovakia, women got 3 years of paid maternity leave.
Get out.
Yep.
Get out.
Right. If they were working, their job was held for 3 years for them. And they got paid during that time. They got 90% of their salary the first year. Then I think it dropped to 80 and then 75 the third year. But we also noticed that the family planning, most of the children were spaced at least 3 years apart. So they learned how to play the system a little bit. But that's not bad, because spacing your children 3 years apart is a very effective way of family planning, because that means every child gets at least 3 years of full attention, and they don't have to compete for that with other siblings who are maybe a year older or a year or two young, older. So it's a very good plan. And I know when we were over there, we were asked to go out and speak to various groups. And the theme of our talk always was, well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't change these policies because the West doesn't have these. Because after communism fell, this was just after communism fell, and there was this rush to try to adopt everything Western and to do away with everything that they had before. I said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Keep this policy because it's absolutely an important policy that most of the countries in the West don't have.
But I mean, at least we have something now. I mean, it might not be great, but at least it's something. It's
a little bit, and it's a little too late. And I mean, countries like Sweden have a year of paid not only maternity leave but paternity leave. Fathers can stay home from their job for a year and get paid. And I mean, that's the kind of support that you really need to create this kind of equal parenting that we have. Mm-hmm. This model of equal parenting that we're talking about with the male mother. So we're far short of where we should be in terms of family policy, family planning, and we have a long way to go yet. And I think if we could look at some of these other countries and what they're doing and how this is affecting their children, giving them the secure foundation they need to grow up and be responsible citizens, I think maybe we can learn something there.
Or if you have men tap more into their male mothers, then they would be empathic into the need of the man being there. I mean, because if you think about it, who's making the rules? The men.
The men, right? Yeah. People said if we had actually if we even had the proportion of women in Congress that we have in our population, the rules would be different. They wouldn't make the kind of laws that they are now making. And in fact, interestingly, when we were in Czechoslovakia, this was another progressive idea that the West has not adopted. They had a cabinet level person whose job was to make sure that no laws were passed by the legislature that would have any adverse effect on families. Can you imagine that?
I mean, that's kind of hard to even wrap your mind around,
isn't it? Yeah, but that was absolutely essential, and that person's job was to review every piece of legislation that was being proposed, and then to make recommendations about if it needed to be changed so it wasn't adversely affecting families in any way.
Wow. I heard this one joke, and I'm sure it went around, if men could get pregnant, then abortion would be a sacrament.
Yeah, right. That's probably true.
Well, but I think when it comes to family and child rearing, because they don't do that job, they just push it away, and they just step outside that role.
I want to say one more thing that was interesting to me when I started writing this book. I was going to do some research, so I sent out an email to 53 fathers that I knew, and I said, if you're interested in helping me, answer these 3 questions and send me your responses. Email me back your responses. The 3 questions were, what did you do as a father when your kids were young that you really are proud of and you think really worked very well in helping the children? Are you there?
Yeah, I just dropped something.
Okay. And then the second question was, and what did you do that didn't work? That as you look at it now, you say, well, that one didn't work as well. And then the third question was, if you had to do over again, if you had a mulligan, what would you do differently? And so I sent these out. I thought they would be pretty easy for fathers to answer. And out of the 53, they all said yes, they would fill out the questions. Only 7 of them were capable of filling them out and sending them back. So I started following up with some of these people. Actually, some of them followed up with me. I sent them a second email saying, I haven't gotten your response yet. What's going on? I got a phone call from a couple of them. One father was in tears. He was sobbing. He said, "This has brought up so much for me. I can't answer your questions. I just can't do it. I feel so much guilt and shame about what I didn't do and what I should have done, that I can't do it." So only 7 of the 53 who agreed to do it were able to fill out those questions and send them back to me. I was amazed at that, which showed to me how many fathers are carrying around a lot of guilt and shame about not doing a good job of raising their kids. And I'm saying to fathers, please forgive yourself. Nobody's perfect at this. You have to cut yourself some slack. As I said earlier, if you don't, your kids are going to have more of a relationship with your guilt and shame than they will with you. And do you want that? No, most fathers don't.
No, I mean, I think they want the best for their children, even though they don't know how to provide it.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, well, we're running out of, actually, we're pretty much out of time. Do you have any closing comments that you would make to encourage our male listeners, our potentially new male mothers, into taking the next step in working on themselves?
Well, I think the young males, and most of them have gotten it. They know that this is important, and they're taking steps to try to be equal parents. Obviously, sometimes because they grew up in a society that didn't emphasize learning these male mother skills, they're going to have some skills to learn. It's like learning any new job. So the book provides that information for them. Here are the skills you need to learn, and here's how to learn them. The second thing is, even if your children are older, it's never too late to provide this support for them. I mean, as a grandfather now, I'm still giving support to my kids and my grandkids that use my male mother skills. So you're never going to be anything but a father if you have children, and so you're always going to be a father, no matter how old your children are. And there's always opportunities at any age to provide them with the support they need to develop the things that they didn't maybe learn early on because you didn't have the skills.
Excellent. And if somebody wants to get a copy of your book, The Male Mother, The Missing Skill Set for Fathers?
Well, it's available at Amazon in 2 forms. It's available as an ebook for almost nothing. I think it's $4.
Dang.
And then it's also available as a print-on-demand book from Amazon, from CreateSpace, and it's a little bit more. I think it's $15. So if you want a book in your hand, you pay $15. If you have a Kindle or a device where you can do an ebook, you can buy it for a lot less and read it there. But I encourage you, if you're a young father or if you're a grandfather or a father of children of any age, that you can learn something from this that will help your children.
Excellent. Barry, wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for coming on
well,
again.
Thank you. And actually, this is the first book of a series of 4. So I might ask you to come on again when I start talking about the other books.
Well, I love talking to you. It's always a great conversation. And everybody learned something. The male mother. Who'd have thought?
Yeah. Well, actually, I actually that title is a bit provocative, and I kept it there for that reason. I think it would create some interest and curiosity. So I think
it works.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Barry, I need to let you go because the music is going to be coming up. Okay?
Thank you again.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye, Barry.
Bye-bye, Rita.
That's Barry Weinhold. His book is The Male Mother, The Missing Skill Set for Fathers. And we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Louise, will return right after these messages.
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN chat lounge, the game lounge, video lounge, or the mood lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
We only have a couple of seconds before we have to get back to the show, and I want to tell you how you can jumpstart your intuition today. Using my free 50-page introductory guide filled with simple, revolutionary, and proven techniques, you can ignite your intuition and tap into your inner wisdom, all from the comfort of your own home. The Institute of Applied Energetics is the leader in online home study instruction for those interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Now is the time to transform your life and take it to a completely new level. Discover who you are and how you work. Open the door to the world of intuition, health, and healing. You can jumpstart your intuition right away by going to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and downloading our free guide. Get the opportunity of a lifetime and live the life you deserve. Download your free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide today at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and begin living a life filled with passion and purpose.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all of the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. Oh my God, you have those moments where you get to hang out or interact with just spectacular people. And this hour, you're going to hang out and visit with the famous Erich Von Däniken, and we're going to pick his brain and find out everything he knows about ancient aliens and extraterrestrials. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Let me tell you a little bit about Erich and get him on the air. For over 45 years, Erich Von Däniken has pursued the theory which postulates that the Earth has been visited by extraterrestrials in the remote past. Erich, the world's most successful nonfiction writer of all time, has written 55 books and e-media on the topic and has sold over 65 million copies worldwide. A man who probably doesn't need an introduction on this show. His webpage is Däniken.com. Please welcome Erich Von Däniken. Hey, Erich, how are you?
Well, I'm sitting in Switzerland. It's blue sky. The mountains are full with white snow. It's very spectacular.
Well, that just sounds wonderful. I'm sitting here in Texas, and we have blue skies, no snow. Thank God.
Okay.
Erich, you are the godfather of the ancient alien theory. And my question to you is not about the theory, but what made you first suspect, that just had that inkling that the gods of the Bible or the gods that we worship and pray to were not omnipotent beings like we've been taught to believe, but instead were extraterrestrials?
Well, it's a long, long time ago. You see, I was educated in Switzerland as a strict Catholic. And for 6 years, I was in a boarding school in Switzerland led by Jesuits. So I was a boy with 16 years, and I was a deep, deep believer in the concept of God. By the way, I still believe in God, although I cannot explain it. So at that time, when I was a boy, I said to myself, some minimum qualities. For example, God would never make a mistake. Or God is out of time. He would not need to make an experience and then he has to wait what the result is, what the outcome is. Or God, of course, would never need a vehicle to move from point A to point B. God is all over. So in this boarding school, we had to translate parts of the Bible from Latin to Greek and from Greek to German. And there I learned that the God of the Old Testament had none of these minimum qualities. God made mistakes. He used vehicles, he made experiences, and he didn't know the result in advance. So I was simply shocked, and I had doubts in my own religious education. And I wanted to find out if other communities in antiquity have similar stories of flying beings descending from the clouds with smoke, fire, loud noise, trembling and so on. That was the beginning of everything, and it all ended with the book Chariots of the Gods.
What made you make the connection, connect the dots between these characters that you were reading about in the Bible and other mythology or philosophical systems and extraterrestrials? Because I would think back in that day, the notion of extraterrestrials wasn't that, I'm going to say, popular.
No, it was not popular at all. You see, I was always aware, I always knew that our Stone Age ancestors, they had some natural religions. For example, our Stone Age people, some 10,000 years ago, they did not know why the lightning flashes down from the sky. They could not understand what the thunder was. Maybe they were victims of an earthquake or something. So they started to be afraid of nature. And the first religions we had on our planet were definitely natural religions. But then of a sudden something changed. Beings from the clouds, from the sky, descended to the humans. Now, how can you make a difference between these beings and natural religion? I mean, the lightning is also descending from the cloud, or the thundering is coming from the cloud. The difference is between the knowledge. You see, these beings from outer space, these so-called gods, they teach humans. They say to them, look, human, go there, and if you are there, you will see a little light. And you humans, you call this little light moon. But the moon has in reality no light. The moon receives his light from the sun. And then they explained, our humans, the moon, why the high moon, the low moon, and all these things are working. So it was information in astronomy, sometimes information about the date, about our calendar, about the leap year, etc. And all this was not the same as nature. Nature did not speak. Nature did not give scientific information. So we had to make a difference between the natural gods and the ones from outer space. So that was the next link I had. Of course, in the beginning, I was still very young, then about 19, 20 years old. All my friends said, Erich, you must be crazy. And in the school, I was, the padres, the teachers, they were all professors. I talked to them very friendly. What about this? And they just said, Erich, you must read more and more in the Bible and more of our holy books, then you will understand. And I read and read and read, and my understanding became more and more confused.
But after all of that reading, did you find that your belief in the gods being extraterrestrials increase, or did you just get more confused?
No, it definitely increased. Of course, I made some mistakes. When you are a young man, by the way, at that time, I came from the family of hotel business. My mother and my father, they were owner of a hotel. So after my high school, I first went into the hotel business. There were times when I was simply a waiter. I was a cook. I was sitting at the reception desk. I was in the hotel school for 2.5 years. And when I wrote Chariots of the Gods, I was the managing director of a first-class hotel in Switzerland. So I had to work at the same time to make money. So, of course, my belief in the extraterrestrials God, they came stronger and stronger. All through, I made some mistakes. When you are young, you are not self-critical enough. You believe everything what someone says. And you always want to have right. So in Chariots of the Gods, there are a few mistakes, which I was criticized for. That's okay. But later you learn and learn and learn, and you try do not make the same mistakes a second time.
Whether you're young or old, it seems like you gather the information, you synthesize it the best you can, and you present it as best you can with the best meaning that you can. And, are you 100% correct all of the time? No, not necessarily.
Nobody is. I mean, we are all making mistakes, of course. But the belief, in the meantime, it's not the belief anymore. I have too many indications, I would even say too many proofs, which clearly show this planet was visited by beings from outer space, and before these beings left, they promised to our ancestors to return one day again back to Earth. That's why in every religion, still today, in every living religion, we all have the expectation of the return of some gods. We Christians, we believe that Jesus will return one day, but the Muslim society believes their Mahdi will return one day. As we know, the Buddhistic society expects the returning of Buddha, or the great Jewish community, they wait for the return of their Messiah. So this promise of return is very, very old. And I am afraid not every religion can be right. Some of them must be wrong. So what happens if they all are wrong? Somebody will return. But I guess neither Messiah or Jesus or Mahdi or Buddha, simply extraterrestrials.
I have a question for you. When we look at the stories, the mythology, the legends that come out of cultures around the world, as you're suggesting, the return of the gods or a Messiah, we find that same storyline, or lots of different storylines, stories of the flood, stories of them coming from the sky. In each of these cultures that seem isolated, we find it in Australia, we find it in the New World, we find it obviously in Europe and the Middle East. Any idea how these stories manage to make it all the way around the world?
Well, I make an example with Christianity. We know that we had a wonderful figure called Jesus Christ. He was living in Jerusalem some 2,000 years ago. We know from the Gospels that he died and etc. So we know all this story. Then a Christian culture appears. That Christian culture has constructed great cathedrals, wonderful churches, wonderful high altars, wonderful music. I think of Sebastian Bach with their orchestra, etc. It's all a Christian cultures, but no architect, no painter, no artist, no musicians was eyewitness at the time of Jesus. They all just worked out of tradition. The same thing happened with the extraterrestrials. Some of our ancestors, they saw these extraterrestrials. They had direct contact. And then it turned into mythology. And mythology grows all over the planet. Maybe different cultures had some visits of these extraterrestrials. Not everyone. And later, because of the knowledge in tradition, they start to make cave paintings. They start to sculpt the gods into their temples and so on. So it is not necessary that these extraterrestrials were all over the world. But the traditions have grown all over the world, like Christianity, like every other religion.
And the part that I would like to throw in is, it sounds like from your perspective, the stories that have come down to us, you believe there is a basis in fact at some point in time in our past.
Definitely. Yes, you see, these extraterrestrials, they behave themselves like today's ethnologists would do. They studied a few tribes, they learned a few language, they gave a few advice how life could be easier, and then they disappeared with the promise to return in the faraway future. But I think they just did not disappear without any proof. They left something behind, something which I call a time capsule. In this time capsule, we would find some writings in whatever form, on which we are explained we were here from that and that planet with that and that technology for that and that reason. We found that and that here. We talked to them, etc. We will return. But the problem is, if you make a deposit, I call it a time capsule, somewhere in the earth, You have to be very careful that during the next 5,000 years, this time capsule is not destroyed, be it by earthquakes, be it by great flood, be it by ants or animals or whatever. So how do you manage this? We have to think what would be a logical place to look for a time capsule left behind by the extraterrestrials some thousands of years ago. One possibility is that they left, for example, a simple satellite surrounding the Earth, not bigger than a football. Now, in this satellite, they would know it is not destroyed, neither by great flood, neither by earthquakes, neither by animals, ants, and whatever. But the problem is now, you planned this satellite 5,000 years in the past around the orbit of the Earth. How do you manage it now that the humans 5,000 years later go and look for the satellite? The humans have to have a reason to seek, to search, to make researches. Even if you have a time capsule, let's say someone beneath the pyramid, somebody in the future has to come to the idea, hey, there must be something. So they left indications, and these indications we can prove. In my over 35 books, I have published many of these indications. Some of them are maybe perfectly wonderful, others may be bad. It's on to the scientific community to make a choice what is reasonable and what is unreasonable. But at least because of all these indications, we have now the question. We have the question, something was wrong in our past, in prehistoric time. Now we ask, why can we explain that? Was there maybe a higher civilization at that time than our civilization today? If not, have we been visited by extraterrestrials? And if we have been visited by extraterrestrials, where is the concrete proof? That's exactly the situation we have today. Because of the indications, we have now the question. Now it's time for a scientific community to look, to search for what I call the time capsule, and we will find it.
What kind of indications are you talking about? Can you give a few examples?
Of course. Everyone knows ancient Greek. Ancient Greece is full of temples. Everybody knows maybe of Delphi, of Epidaurus, of different old ancient temples. Now, all these temples are linked together in the same distance with the same geometrical angle. There is a whole network over antique Greece. Now, one could say, well, maybe the old Greeks, they planned their temples in a geometrical pattern. Because in Greece, we had wonderful mathematicians like Euclid, for example, or Plato, or Pythagoras. But all these temples existed already in Stone Age time. So there was a holy place in Stone Age time, which later becomes a temple like Delphi and Epidaurus. So this geometrical pattern was laid down before Euclid, before Pythagoras, before Plato. It is older. Now, our Stone Age people, they knew nothing about mathematics and geometry. Why should they put their temples in the same distance from one to another in the same geometrical angle? And in some cases, these temples are far away from one to each other. For example, between Greece and the Mediterranean islands of Creta, there's a distance which you cannot look over by the naked eye. So there was a planning behind it. Who made this planning? I suggested these extraterrestrials were worshipped by the humans as the gods. Of course, the extraterrestrials knew we are not gods. They even told them, you should make no pictures about God. We are not gods. But the humans adored them, and the humans may said, we want to create some memory for you, for a temple for the future generations. And the so-called gods said, okay, we accept this, but please make your temple exactly at this place and not at another, and the next temple at this place, etc. They knew that mankind, after a few thousand years, would be able to fly. And they knew that mankind, after a few thousand years, they would make maps on their landscapes. And sooner or later, they would realize something is wrong here because of the same distance and the same angles. And that's exactly the indications which they put on purpose in the deep past for mankind of the future.
Do you find similar patterns of, I'm going to say, more contemporary structures, speaking like Greek, being built onto older structures, and then this network or pattern being formed as well?
Exactly. That's exactly the case. All these Greek temples existed in Stone Age temples and Stone Age times. They were primitive holy places in Stone Age times. You see today, when you have a place of pilgrim, for example, some children say, we had a vision of the Holy Mother of Jesus. Now, this pilgrim place in the beginning is only an altar. Later, it's a little chapter. Then more and more people can buy if they want to visit the holy place. Then the first church is built. And later the first hotel and the first water pipes, etc. So all these pilgrim places, they grow and grow from antiquity to the present. The same thing happened in ancient Greece. In prehistoric time, in Stone Age time, there was already a primitive holy place there. And later, the places grow to Delphi, to Epidaurus, to whatever it is, the Acropolis, etc. But we also have such things in other places of the world. For example, in French Brittany, which is not too far away from my place. It's about 700 kilometers from Switzerland. In French Brittany, there are thousands and thousands of stones made out of granite in specific lines. Now, there were speculations over the centuries. For what have our Stone Age persons made these stone lines? It was suggested maybe it's just a place for astronomy where you can watch the stars, you can see how the moon goes up, etc., etc. Only a few decades ago, it was in 1976, the whole places were photographed and filmed by helicopters. And then they make the pattern on Earth, and they realized that these stone lines are not standing there by coincidence. It's all a geometrical pattern. It's always the same length of 2,650 meters. It's always the same angles, or exactly the half of 2,560 meters. So we find Pythagorean triangles in the ground made out in stones from a Stone Age society which knew nothing about Pythagoras. Again, it is not my ideas that extraterrestrials, they move stone around. No, they never made their hands dirty. They simply ordered to our forefathers, please, bring these stones there and there. Maybe they helped them how it was easier to move them, because they know exactly in a far future, mankind will find out that this is geometry.
Is that why we...
Ich kann nicht reden in einem Interview. Yes, continue.
Is that why, as a culture or as humanity, we really don't have any recollection of why they were built in the first place, why we erected these stones, why we erected monoliths, why we, have these standing stones around the world?
That's exactly the point. It was not made by coincidence. It was not made because of some calendar, including Stonehenge. It has all a meaning which goes back to the so-called gods, which were the extraterrestrials some thousands of years ago. It is not coincidence. It is made on purpose. The reason is that we, humans, in modern time, in the time of aircraft, in the time of measuring, that we recognize of a sudden, hey, something is wrong here on this planet. And this does not fit to the Stone Age, primitive Stone Age forefathers. So we have to ask new questions. The facts are here, on the ground, on the land, and not only there. They are also here in the Holy Scriptures.
They're in every culture. I have to ask you, I remember seeing, I think it was in Search of Ancient History. I don't even remember the name of the show. It was, from the 70s. And you were on the show, and they showed the lines of Nazca. And I have to tell you, I held my breath. I was just so shocked by those images. When you went there for the first time, what was your impression?
Ich kann im Moment nicht reden, ich bin in einem Interview. Sorry. Yes, I was first in Nazca in 1959. Nazca was not known at that time. Only a few persons knew that there are some lines in the ground. Now, really, on television and even in the so-called scientific books, I read some nonsense about Nazca. This is incredible. The real pictures of Nazca are never shown on television, nowhere. You find them only in my book. Nazca is a mystery. First of all, when you are on the ground of Nazca, it's just a desert like other deserts. There are black stones, black and brown stones and brown sand. Soon as you fly a little over the desert of Nazca, the first thing you see are figures. Figures in the sand scratched out, figures like fishes, monkeys, spiders, and so on. Then you fly higher again. Then you see lines. These lines look like airstrips. They start abruptly, they end abruptly. The longest about it is 3.6 kilometers long. Then you go even higher. And then you see in the middle, in the midst of all these things, figures and lines, you see even longer lines, but these longer lines are small, about 1.5 meter large. But long, the longest of it is 23 kilometers long, crossing hills and mountains, etc. So Nazca is a whole mystery. Now, of course, it is possible to make small figures in the ground by scratching away the surface. This is absolutely understandable. You scratch away the dirty, the brown stones, and then it comes a little brighter, a little shinier, the ground. So you can make figures out of that. But this does not explain the gigantic lines. Sometimes the top of a mountain was cut off, completely cut off, and they put one of these lines looking like an airstrip. By the way, I never said it is an airstrip. I always said, seen from the air, it looks like an airstrip. I have in my archive around 5,000 pictures about Nazca. And whenever I have an archaeologist here, and we look at these pictures in color at the computer, they say, Erich, this is impossible, this is not Nazca. I say, I'm sorry, this is Nazca. Television has never shown the true Nazca.
But when you talk about these lines, the ones that look like runways, and in my mind, the one that is the 23 kilometers long, are they straight? I mean, if someone is taking a stick and carving into the ground, you would think that they would kind of be crooked and meander here and there.
No, absolutely straight. Complete. Like with the lineal. They are just 23 kilometers over hills and mountains. Nobody has an explanation for it. And you see, we have made some scientific researches in Nazca. There is a university here in Dresden. Dresden is a city in East Germany. And we paid, I mean the Erich Von Däniken Society and the Erich Von Däniken Foundation, we paid over 150,000 euros for the university in Dresden to make certain measurements at the plain of Nazca. I was asking, for example, is there something which is maybe a mineral or whatever, which is not explainable, which should not be on Nazca? What about the magnetic fields? Has the magnetic field on the Earth changed in Nazca? And why, etc.? And the fact was, the scientific outcome, we have a change of the magnetic field under some of these lines. These lines which are made artificially. And you can even measure, about 6 meters under the line, there is something which influences the magnetic field. Now, a normal average reader would say, what about 6 meters under the line? Why don't you make a hole? It's not permitted. Nazca is one of these world, UNESCO place, and you're not allowed to scratch on the surface. All what you can make is measurements from above, from the surface. You are not allowed to make any diggings. But we know for sure something is wrong in Nazca. And the scientific community did not pick up that case until today.
Well, and it seems like that whole region, because we have Nazca, we have Paracas with the elongated skulls, we have Sacsayhuaman with the carved stones that are unexplainable in my mind. That whole, the Inca Trail, that whole area is just so full of mysteries, and I find it interesting that no one's really exploring it.
Well, we always want to be reasonable. We are in a society which suggests be reasonable. For example, normal astronomers say, and they are correct, between the stars is such and such a distance. This distance is measured in light years. It is not possible to move the light years from one star to another. So this is reasonable. If you have this in your mind, you say, why extraterrestrials? They should never have been able to visit us, even if they do exist. Or in the scientific community, you say, if extraterrestrials exist, they would look completely different than the humans, because evolution on another world grows up completely different. And this is only partly true, because we could be the offsprings of another society. Like the old holy book said, the gods created humans according to their own image. So then they are looking similar. So we always wanted to be reasonable. The same thing happened in archaeology. We say Stone Age people made that and that temple. And in most of the cases, it's correct. But nobody asks more questions. When I have come the first time up to Pumapunku is in Bolivia, in the highland, is about 4,000 meters high. There we have a temple where you immediately realize this temple was made by humans. It's human stone cutting, it's chiseling, etc. But just a few kilometers away, you find other stones in the ground which are cut in such a precise work with small lines, grooves, etc., that it is impossible for Stone Age people to do it. You even find prefabricated blocks. That means like Lego stones. You just can put them together. That means planning. Planning means writing. Finally, we know how hard the stone is. Granite, for example, is hard, has the figure number 8. So if you want to work on granite, it's such a precise work, you need a tool which is harder than granite. But the Stone Age people had no tools harder than granite. Or we find blocks which have a weight of 80 tons. Stone Age people were not able to move 80-ton platforms from one point to the other. And then at the same thing, you always have mythology. There, in Pumapunku, in the highland of Bolivia, when the Spanish conquerors come up there, the Indians were all around, including the ruler of the India, the Inca. And the Spanish asked the natives, who has done this? Not even we Spanish people would be able to make such a precise work. We would not be able to move, to transport such blocks. And then the natives, including the Inca ruler, said, it was not us who made this. It was the gods who made this in one simple night. Which gods? The gods from the sky. The gods who were descending with loud smoke and fire and trembling from the sky. The question remains, why have the gods done such thing? I have a possible answer.
I'd love to hear
when we, for example, our mountain climber, they go to the Himalaya. Now you always use a base camp. You don't want to take all your material, your stuff, your photo apparatus, your technological stuff up to the top of the mountain. So you make a basic camp. The same thing happened with extraterrestrials some thousands of years ago. There was a mother spaceship surrounding the Earth, and from the mother spaceship, smaller vehicles have come down to the Earth. Today in America, you would call them space shuttles. From these space shuttles, again, smaller vehicles came out. Like on the moon, we have had the landing robot, we had the moon car, etc. And now the natives, now the extraterrestrials, they start to make their ethnological exploration. But at certain places, they say, stop, here we stay for 2 or 3 years. We want to study the natives. There is a tribe. We want to teach them a little. And now they start to create a base camp for themselves. Base camp where they can deposit their high technology so that it is not destroyed by animals or by the weather, etc. That's the solution. Later, the gods disappear, and what is left is the base camp. And now the natives come. And the natives look with their eyes to this perfectly cutted stone, and they say, the gods made it. We are not able to do it. And now the natives start to create a temple at the same place because it has become a holy place. So we have two different things to see. The technology of the extraterrestrials, which was not Stone Age technology, and the technology of our Stone Age people, which we can perfectly understand.
Is that what you think was going on at Baalbek, where we have those
Baalbek too? Oh yes, Baalbek.
Baalbek
stones? Baalbek is in Lebanon. No, today no tourists can go to Baalbek anymore, at least at the moment, because they still have this war there. You know, this Islamic and Arabic war there. But Baalbek has a gigantic terrace, absolutely gigantic. Their stone block were moved of 900 tons. Imagine this, 900 tons, and not one, about 60 of it. This is not a flat landscape, it's hill and mountains. So we have no idea how Stone Age people could have moved 90-ton blocks over hills. But the legend again says, in the beginning, this was a place of the gods. From here, they have come down from the sky, and from here they started. Later, the Babylonians and later the Romans constructed a temple at the same place. But the beginning, the oldest was not the temple. The oldest was a terrace, a platform of Baalbek, put together of gigantic stones.
Gigantic stones. If you were to pick, and I this might be a hard question to answer, I mean, easy but hard. If you were to pick one group whose art, myth, and culture clearly demonstrates that we were visited by extraterrestrials in the past, who would you pick?
I have two possibilities. One are the Holy Scriptures, and the others are the hard facts, something which everyone can see with his eyes. In the Holy Scriptures, we have a book called the Book of Enoch. It comes from Ethiopia. And there is a man, his name was Enoch. He clearly writes in the first person, that means eyewitness person, what happened at his time. He was taken up by beings, he says, they were not from this earth. They did not breathe like humans did, etc. He came up to what today we would call a mother spaceship. He learned their language. They taught him in astronomy, in calendar, etc., and then they brought him back. So parts of the Book of Enoch are absolutely convincing. If we go to the hard facts, you must go to Mexico, to Palenque. Palenque is one of the Maya cities, and in Palenque is one of the temples called the Temple of Inscriptions, because there were over 800 inscriptions found there in 1952. Then, under the temple, Professor Dr. Rutz found a secret tomb, a grave, and in this grave was covered with a large tombstone. I say large because there is 3 meter 80 long, 2 meter 20 large. That's quite one block. And on this block, chiseled out, an incredible picture. You see something like a frame, and inside this frame, a man is sitting, bending forward, almost like a racing motorcyclist. He has some mask on his nose, like an oxygen mask, and he clearly uses his 2 hands to manipulate some controls. You even see the finger of his left hand, who is putting it up. He sits on a chair, and then behind him, out of the frame, you see a linking flame, like fire, coming out. Now, in Maya archaeology, it was clear that this stone represents Pakal. And this is correct, because we have the writings of Pakal on the stone. Pakal was the second last ruler of Palenque. But in the past, archaeologists always thought that Pakal is just descending into the earth. He's falling into the earth. And out of his body is something like the tree of life or the cross of life. Now, in modern time, and this is just 2 years ago, Professor Dr. Stewart, by the way, from the United States, he's the best, the newest, and the most modern professor who can read Maya scripture. He says, no, It is Pakal, that's true, but Pakal is not falling into the earth, and it has nothing to do with the tree of life or the cross of life. Pakal is driving out to the sky, to the universe. It all has to do with universe and with stars. So our meaning has changed. And if you stand before this stone, you go to the internet, Palenque platform, you will find it. Or you see our television, Ancient Aliens, has showed it. It's fantastic. You are just shocked. And this piece of stone is thousands of years old.
Well, and it seems very congruent when you look at cultures around the world. They're always taking some kind of a boat or something when they die to get back to the heavens or to transcend into the next world.
Of course. The same thing happens with the old Egyptian. In old Egypt, we had the so-called pyramid texts. They date back to the pyramid of Unas, for example, the 5th dynasty, back to the 3rd dynasty. In years, that means about 2,600 BC, 2,700 BC, so from today, about 4,700 years. And the walls of these tombs are full with texts, with hieroglyphs. And we were able to translate these hieroglyphs. And there we find incredible thing. Some of the pharaohs says, "You, God, you took me with your ship into the sky. I was flowing over the earth," etc. But in the past, we always interpreted these translations as psychological explanations. It's just a wish or a dream of the king after he's dead. In reality, was not a dream. He simply spoke about facts which happened at his time. He was taken up for a ride. He was flying over the planet. He was looking down to his kingdom. That's why Egypt is full of the sign with the winged sun. You always see a sun who has wing on. So it's always the same thing worldwide.
Exactly. I'm going to shift gears here a little bit because we only have so much time, and I feel I need to ask you this. One question that seems reoccurring in this phenomena is why? Why did they come here? Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's the best question of all. I don't know. We have been making so-called brainstorming sessions, and we have asked us the same questions. Why? We have come to about 15 possible answers, and we have no final answer. But I think it is part of the intelligence in the universe to grow, to spread out, to multiply themselves. Soon as we find planets which are similar, planets which are not too hot and not too cold, planets like our Earth. And in the meantime, we know that only in our Milky Way we have about 5 billion of Earth-like planets. So soon as you have planets like this, you want to spread out. You want to spread out your form of intelligence, like we did it in a primitive way on Earth in our colonial times.
One of the things, and I think it's wonderful to hear this from you, in all of the writing and all of the mythology and all of the text or oral law that has come down to us, we don't have that answer. There's never been any insights into why they came, why they were here, what their purpose was, other than that they created us. That seems pretty clear.
In ancient Indian texts, in the Mahabharata or in the Vedic texts, 2 or 3 times some human asked their gods, "Why have you come here? What was the reason?" And the answer was always, "We come here to study you." So like ethnologists.
Interesting. You made the statement earlier in the interview that they were here and then they left. So you don't believe that there has been visitation over the years since antiquity?
Oh, yes. I believe again now. I was always a very skeptic, at least for at least 30, 40 years. I was very skeptic in the UFO stories, because there was too many rubbish and nonsense around. Also, they were nice and honest people. But in the meantime, I have changed my opinion. You know, some years ago, I had the chance to meet Professor Dr. John Mack. John Mack was a Harvard professor, and he would publish a book called Abductions, about the abductions of humans by extraterrestrials. And in the last years, I had the chance in, the contact in the desert, Joshua Tree, etc., to meet wonderful personalities who had contact with extraterrestrials. So for the moment, I really start to believe somebody is observing us again. Somebody is teaching our language, learning our language. Somebody is trying to find out what are we, what political systems, what religious systems do we have. They study us. Maybe they want to find out, could we be dangerous? What kind of weapons do we have? But something is going on in the past 30 years. And maybe they return, they are already back, and they don't show up at the moment.
Why do you think we've lost sight of our past?
It's probably because of religion, but also because of education. As I said before, education means scientific education, and scientific education has to be reasonable. It has to make sense. And extraterrestrials, for the last 2,000-3,000 years, made no sense. Our science, our modern science, is maybe about 50, 60, or 70 years old. And it made no sense to think about extraterrestrials. But in the meantime, the situation has changed. We know we have Earth-like planets out there. We know it is possible to travel from star to star. In the meantime, we have an opener mind, and we should reconsider the visit of the extraterrestrials, be it in the deep past or be it in present time again. We should put it on the level of scientific. At the moment, it's not scientific because science wants to be reasonable. I always say to my followers, in that case, be unreasonable.
Well, and it seems like today we have technology that somewhat parallels or rivals what you read about in a lot of the ancient stories.
Of course. Yes. Well, oh, God, I have, as I said, many books on the market. And if you read it, you sooner or later, because you can control everything which I write and I speak to, sooner or later you came to the same conclusion as I. I had a lot of scientific criticisms, and most of them were wonderful and integral personality who always thought, this is all rubbish, what this Erich Von Däniken says. And then we sit together, quiet, friendly, and had a scientific discussions. And after 2 hours, they always said to me, Erich, we didn't know this. We had no information about this. So we change our meaning as time changed.
Do you feel vindicated now that the paradigm and toward the whole idea of extraterrestrials in our past has changed?
Of course, I am happy. I mean, in the meantime, I am, nearly 80 years old. My brain works perfect. I'm still traveling. And by the way, I will be in the United States this year at least twice. One is this contact in the desert, Joshua Tree on May 29th. And the other visit in the United States is the Edgar Cayce IRA in Virginia Beach in the end of October. So I am happy that I am invited worldwide. And they present me as a sort of a living legend.
You're a man that needs no introduction, in my mind. Let me ask you this one last question. Your work has influenced millions of people around the world. What do you hope your legacy will be in 20, 50, 100 years from now?
I hope that what I started with this, will never die again. In the meantime, too many other authors around the world and absolutely integral personalities have come up with their book and with similar stories. Also now on the market, we have the first scientific books written by scientists of their special branch, for example, from philosophy or from the technological point of view. So I think what I started will not die out anymore. If they call me later in 25 years, I was a fool or I had just had enough fantasy, it doesn't matter. important is that we learn this planet was visited by extraterrestrials in the deep past. They promised to return, and they will return.
Well, and I think that's going to be a very interesting day, if they're not already here. If the contact that people are having isn't contact with these gods that we were in contact with before.
I would exclude nothing. Everything is possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Erich, I know that you have a lot going on. You have a lot on your plate, so I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much for coming on and spending time with me. You have made my day.
I have been happy to be able to talk to you and that you give me the chance to talk to me. Please tell the people in the United States when I'm in the United States again. So on the 29th of May in Contact in the Desert, Joshua Tree, and at Edgar Gage's place in Virginia Beach, 9th to 11th October. Bye-bye and thank you. Ciao.
Well, okay, Erich, thank you very much. All right, bye-bye.
Ciao, thank you. Ciao.
That's Erich Von Däniken, the author of Chariots of the Gods and 54 other books. His website is Däniken.com. And next week, we're going to be speaking with Laird Scranton about the point of origin. Until next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy Radio. Be blessed.